I am live. I am reading out of Return to Elysium. It is another of Joan Grant's far memory books. It is her life as Lucina in ancient Greece, 2,500 BC, or 2 centuries BC, it said. I am now in chapter 7. Lucina has arrived, and she has been quite a while on the island of Elysium. She found out that she was born on that island. A few days later, Narcissus woke me soon after dawn. I was sleepy and muttered, "It is much too early to get up." "You had better hurry," he said abruptly. "Euclapius wants us. We are to wait for him in the loggia." "Why?" "He didn't tell me. He said he wanted to speak to all of us, except Praxiteles. Anyway, Praxiteles couldn't come, for he went to Athens yesterday. He heard that a shipload of marble had arrived from Pharos." "Is anything wrong?" I scrambled out of bed, looked for my tunic, which had fallen behind one of the chests. "I've told you I don't know. I can't stay here making futile guesses. I haven't woken Euripides yet." He went out, slamming the door. He was in such a bad temper that I thought it was unwise to annoy him, so I combed my hair and made sure my nails were clean before joining the others. Asclepius must have been watching through the window, for before I had time to ask any questions, he came out of his room. "You will remember," he said gravely, "that I recently gave to each of you a cloak of Tyrian purple. There were only 6, so I could not get one for Praxiteles. You wore them for the first time 5 days ago at Lucina's birthday feast. I have disquieting news. The merchant who sold them to me has died of plague, a scourge prevalent in Syria, but very rare in Greece. So far as my medical knowledge goes, and it's not inconsiderable, there is no effective remedy. However, as I have told you many times, unless you allow fear to enter your mind, your body will almost certainly remain invulnerable." I hope none of the others saw the blood drain from my face, or knew my hands were cold with sweat. I tried to make my voice sound as though I were asking an ordinary question. "How shall we know if we've got it?" The early stages are sometimes confused with insect bites. Then a rash develops, small red blisters, usually first observed on the hands and chest. This is associated with pain in the joints and a mild degree of fever. I shall not alarm you with details of the last extremity of this terrible disease, which is mercifully brief, death being probably on the 7th day. If you remember that life is far stronger than death, you will have no cause for anxiety. "What shows that life is winning?" I said. "If you sleep soundly, if you eat without vomiting, if you are free from sudden cold sweats. And if we get a rash." Cleon's voice sounded much more convincingly calm than mine, and I instinctively moved closer to him. "You will have 2 or 3 days during which your mind should remain clear, in which to digest your experience, a process few men learn in extreme age. You will find nothing alarming in death if you have eaten the essential core of the fruit of living, the seed of the tree of serenity. If any of us follow the merchant, can anything be done to prevent it spreading through the household?" said Epicurus, his first consideration still for his stewardship instead of only himself. "You will be segregated in the house on the headland until the danger of infection is past. Food and such other necessities as you may require have already been sent there. Should one of you die, the body must be burned and the ashes thrown into the sea. Remember, all of you, death to the realist is no more than the seal on the record of a life." Could I stand here unswayed by emotion unless I had learned the acceptance I have tried to teach? "I commend you into the keeping of your integrity. There are no other gods." Then he turned and went to his room, slowly and without looking back, as though he tried to believe he was sure of seeing us all tomorrow. And tomorrow. For the first time I felt pity for Asclepius. I saw him as a man hiding behind a mask. A man who also gained his strength in unreality, who desperately needed the concept of the dispassionate philosopher to protect him from human emotion. In silence we took the familiar path to the forsaken house. Asclepius had often spoken of the circle of life. Was my circle to be so meticulously joined that it ended where it began, in the same small room whose faded shutters swayed in the wind of timeless sea? But I had no child for whom to light a lamp, no vision of the future to warm a tenuous mortality. 7 days. Could I live enough in 7 days to learn to accept impermanence? We must forget yesterday and tomorrow, said Cleon. We shall bring fear with us if we allow ourselves to think how profoundly a few words have changed this morning from all other mornings. The sky is the same. The sea is the same. We must be the same. Remember, he said none of us would die if we had sufficient courage. What did the merchant fear? Said Agamemnon. Poverty, or the superior cunning of a rival, or loss in exchange of goods. Merchants are never free from fear. At least we need not echo his fears. Epicurus sounded scornful, and the others, who had never seen him as I had, stared at him in surprise. I thought you considered merchants a superior race, said Narcissus. You have often told us that everything would be all right if people accepted a standard of real values instead of being swayed by transient and illogical preferences. Perhaps your idea of my standard of values is not complete. You had better ask Lucina about them. She knows more of my thoughts, for what little they are worth, than anyone else. Isn't he a merchant at heart, Lucina? Said Euripides. It has always been my opinion that he is closer to the poet than to the trader. And, chance a few more minutes. Poets don't have the practical intelligence to keep accurate tallies, or to tempt stomachs which are already filled with the wind of discourse, said Agamemnon rudely. At first remark Euripides smiled, in the manner we knew from long experience was intended to provoke an argument. He enjoyed arguments, especially if they grew beyond the limits of debate, for he claimed they provided him with raw material for his plays. Have poets any practical use? Agamemnon seldom let himself be drawn so openly into conflict, for he knew his quick temper usually prevented him winning a battle of words. Have they, Euripides? I was surprised that Cleon seemed to be encouraging this quarrel, until I realized he knew a heated exchange of remarks would help to warm the cold fear lurking inside us. I believe that the lower orders of life are content with the fulfillment of their basic needs. Even the more elaborate plans discern in the bee no more than a vehicle of pollination. A bull, when approaching a cow, does so without tormenting himself in search for appropriate phrases to describe the sweep of her horns or the opulence of her udder. A bull, in fact, behaves according to his nature, dependent for initiative only on the season. Poets therefore have neither the common sense of plants nor the robust realism of animals. Agamemnon looked round to see whether we were aware that at last he seemed to be defeating Euripides on a field which appeared unfavorable. Euripides remained unruffled. Poets are the only completely practical members of any community. If you accept that the continuance of life is at all desirable. He realized this remark had been tactless, so sat down on a fallen tree to show he was in no hurry. Were there to be poets, there would soon be no people. Were there no poets, there would soon be no people. The act by which children are primarily created is, as we have all agreed, one which the philosopher does not find seemly. It is undignified. It disturbs the mind which might otherwise be occupied with matters of importance. It necessitates the company of females who, with the shining exception of Lucina, are unworthy companions even for the less intelligent male. What are women? Our inferiors as animals. For what women could hope to win in the games? Our inferiors as realists. For what man would see his body distorted and his night made hideous by the sound of infant pullings, merely because the desire for flattery was greater than the most elementary common sense, our inferiors as objective, pleasing to the eye, for even Praxiteles has had to admit that his statue of Lucina as a nymph might have been curved in lard instead of marble, the female curves being too soft to endure any permanent medium. I'll stop this here.